So this is just a reminder. This is our working definition of a religion. And we've looked at primal religions or traditional indigenous spiritualities and faiths. We've looked at Hinduism in a very broad sort of way. So hopefully you're starting to tease out some of these terms that we talked about on the very, very beginning of our class. That the religion is a social construct. It is something that is it's horizontal in nature. It's not vertical in nature. It's what people come to have some agreement about. And we talked about how things. Let's take what we talked about in terms of Hinduism, where over a couple of hundreds of years, the Upanishads were constructed to sort of do to look at some of the precepts of the faith of Hinduism and to start writing some new ways to look at the ethics and the myths and meaning from those. Those are all social constructs. Things evolve over time. There isn't a single religion that hasn't evolved over time. That's part of what makes a religion a religion. I used to do, and I might bring it back. It's been a little while since I've done the Ask the Pastor here at Park Church Sunday, where I kind of stand out there instead of doing a sermon. I answer questions that have been raised by the congregation. And in my San Diego church, I would do the same thing. And one of the questions I once got was, if Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad showed up in a synagogue, church, or mosque, would they recognize what was going on? And that was one of the easiest answers I've ever had to say. No, because the religions have changed so much. What even our friends today, what we're going to learn about Judaism, celebrate as Passover. That is not the Passover that Jesus celebrated. That is not the Passover that the Jewish ancestors in the 3rd century BCE celebrated. Those things have changed over time. Jesus had no concept of the church when he was alive. So to walk into a church like Park Church, be like, what is going on? I thought you would hang out with like 15 other people in someone's living room. Like, who thought that this was what it would turn into? So it's social constructs, but those social constructs give meaning to life using beliefs and rituals and myths and everything. So does this ring a bell? Remember this? Yes? Okay. Excellent. Any questions about this or any questions about what we've talked about so far in terms of traditional indigenous spiritualities and faiths or Hinduism from the last week? I know it's been a little bit of time since we've gotten together, but I'm hopeful that we'll be able to. Yeah, Fred.
That definition may work just fine in this room, but would you not agree that in other rooms, people would have a problem with the word myth?
Yeah, so I talked about myth, right? Which you missed. So myth is a story which provides truth or meaning, not necessarily something that's fictitious or not real or true.
That's my point.
Yeah, right. So we're using the academic term myth, which is a story which is agreed upon by a group that provides meaning and truth to their lives.
No, I realize that.
Yeah.
But some people have an issue with the idea, the possibility.
That's right.
A story in their tradition did not historically happen.
That is correct.
That's my point.
Yeah, no, for very sure. Very sure. Hopefully everyone, since we've talked about it. Yeah, Bruce.
It's something that resonates.
Yeah,
Myth
yeah.
resonates.
Yeah, but I hear what Fred's saying, because I definitely have used the word myth in a sermon and have heard about it. Like, I've also called people in the Bible characters, and I've also heard about that as well. So yes. Yeah. So today, like I said, we're going to be talking about Judaism. Judaism is somewhere around 3,500 years old. And it is often credited with being the first of the monotheistic traditions. We'll talk about what that means in the context of Judaism here in a little bit, but that's something that is often said. Have you heard that before, that Judaism is the first monotheistic religion, or that it invented monotheism? Some heads nod, some head shakings.
Define monotheism.
Monotheism is in the belief in one almighty, powerful creator God. Right. That's which is, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in a little bit. Yeah, but that's the idea. It's the first of three major religions that persist and endure and bring meaning to the world that grew out of the Middle East, or is considered today the Middle East. Those three are also sometimes called the Abrahamic faiths, which is Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. But all three still endure to this day, and Judaism is the very first of those. And like I just said, I actually think that Judaism should be essential study for Christians, because without even a rudimentary understanding of Judaism, it's very difficult to understand the teachings of Jesus, the history of Jesus, why his parents did the things that they did. I find it to be essential. I also find it very fascinating that it's only Christian clergy that are not required to learn the original languages. So if you go to a synagogue, anyone visited a synagogue before? Yeah, okay, a couple of you. When you go to a synagogue, the rabbi will read from the Torah in Hebrew, and then we'll translate it in real time. We'll first say the sentence in Hebrew, and then we'll give the translation of it. If you go to a mosque, an imam will do the same thing with the Quran in Arabic. We'll read the Quran in Arabic, and then we'll read it, translate it to those in English. Christianity is the only of the Abrahamic faiths that a clergy person, aka your pastor, doesn't need to know Hebrew or Greek. And I will tell you, my Hebrew is bad, my Greek is worse. And so you cannot put a Torah in front of me and ask me to translate the Torah in real time on the spot. You'd have to give me at least a week for me to come back. So that.
How about your Latin?
My Latin doesn't even. I'm not Catholic, Tim. I don't need an Latin. Get out of here with your Latin. Yeah, my Latin isn't good. What's that?
Your Protestant forebears still spoke.
Yeah. No doubt.
There's always gotta be one that.
I have to say, the other thing I want to make sure that we're pretty clear on is I have a great deal of affection for the Jewish faith and the Jewish people. And I stand on the shoulders of rabbis who have taken me under their wings and have really mentored me. And so from Rabbi Rita Barga to Rabbi Alan Sesher to Rabbi Deborah Marcus, I've spent a lot of time in synagogues, and I have been what in the first century New Testament world would have been called a God-fearer, those Gentiles, those goys that hung out at synagogues to listen to the rabbis, preach and interpret the Torah. I am one of those. So I have, like I said, a great deal of affection for the Jewish people and the Jewish faith. So for our opening prayer today, we're going to hear the Kol Nidre. The Kol Nidre is a prayer that is offered on Yom Kippur. Anyone want to guess? Anybody know what Yom Kippur is? You want to say that again, Alice?
I've heard of it.
Oh, you've heard of it, okay? Okay. Before I go to Fred, anybody else? Because Fred, like me, has spent a lot of times in synagogues. Yeah, you go ahead, Fred.
That's the Day of Atonement.
It's the Day of Atonement. And it is one of two what are called the High Holy Days of Judaism. We're actually going to get to the High Holy Days next week, but I wanted to bring this to your attention. It comes from the 7th century. There's some stories out there that it actually came into vogue during the Spanish Inquisition, and that's not accurate. So if you read that on Wikipedia or something like that, that's not true. It's older than the Spanish Inquisition, though it was definitely used during the Spanish Inquisition by Jews. basically, and the reason why folks might think that it was popular or used by Jews during the Spanish Inquisition is that it is a prayer of denunciation. You pray this to denounce other pledges and vows that you have made to things other than God. And so during the Spanish Inquisition, there would be forced conversions. And so the Spanish Catholic Church would, at spear point, force Jews to convert to Catholicism, to Christianity. And they would do that during the daylight. But then at night, they would gather in their homes around their table, and after lighting the candles and inviting God into their presence, they would then pray what's called the Kol Nidre, which was a denunciation of the vow we did in public that doesn't mean anything. And so on the Day of Atonement, which is the day of reconciliation between the Jewish people and God, the Yom Kippur service begins with a cantor singing the traditional, well, in this case, is the traditional setting of the Kol Nidre. The other thing I want you to be aware of is what you're hearing is not Hebrew. What you're hearing is Aramaic, which is the language that Jesus would have spoken. And so the Kol Nidre was written in Aramaic, and here is the English translation of it. So the vows that we swear and ban or bar from ourselves this Yom Kippur, we regret them. We regret that we said them out loud in public. So they're being asked to be released by God, but by God's providence and grace, that they would be released from the vow that they said in public. So I want you to hear this. This is from Park Avenue Synagogue in New York City, which is a very affluent and large synagogue in New York City. And this is a cantor. So a cantor in a synagogue, there's often at least one rabbi, and then who interprets the Torah, preaches, says the prayers and things, and then there is a cantor who leads the music. And the larger the synagogue and the more money they have, the more cantors and the more type of music they can have. And so I want you to hear this. Oh, I didn't bring my schedule. Oh, I'm sorry. People online are going to get this better than y'all in the room. Sorry.
Kol Nidre v'sarei v'charamei v'konamei v'chinuayei
So what'd you think? I know you couldn't hear it too well in here, but hopefully you heard a little bit.
We did in the front row.
Great, yeah, the front row, right, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah, what, any thoughts? It's a heavy song, right? I mean, hopefully you caught on to some of that. It's a very solemn song, so it's the song of confession, the song of contrition, which is vital. We'll learn next week about some of the rituals in Judaism that the act of contrition and confession is a huge part of the Jewish religion. So there are roughly 15 million Jews worldwide. The vast majority of the Jewish people live either in Israel and Palestine or in the United States. Those are easily dwarfing the regions of the world where Jews live. But our Jewish sisters and brothers live on every continent in the world, except for Antarctica, because no one lives in Antarctica. But they have been to Antarctica, definitely. There was a time when the vast majority of Jewish people lived in Europe. But unfortunately, there was something called the Holocaust. And during the Holocaust, 6 million Jews were murdered systematically by the Third Reich. And then coupled with that was the lesser known but equally as devastating was the extermination of Jewish people under Stalin in the Soviet Union. Along with the creation of the State of Israel in 1947, really changed where the Jewish population in the world resides. And so today, the vast majority are in Israel, which is this little piece right here. It's so tiny, but if we blew that up, it would be the darkest of blues, the same color blue as the United States. Trust me, there's not that many in Alaska. But in fact, most of the Jewish folks who reside in the United States reside in these cities: New York City, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Seattle, Houston, and then in one other state, the state of Florida. Those are the 6 places where the vast majority of Jewish people live. Most of the Jews that live in the United States, though, yeah, Wayne.
I had a guy explain it to me one time. He said Jews are everywhere. In New York, you got the Goldbergs. California, you got the Goldberg, or I can't remember the name. But up in Alaska, you've got the icebergs.
Yes, that's exactly right. Yes, yes, that's exactly right. The vast majority of the Jews that live in the United States are called Ashkenazi Jews. Ashkenazi Jews are the Jews that had resided in mostly Eastern Europe, and then after the Holocaust migrated to the United States. And a smaller set of Jews are what are called Sephardic Jews, which are the Jews that lived in Spain and in Portugal. And when you see this color down in Argentina, the vast majority of Jews in Argentina are Sephardic Jews. That's because in the United States, Ashkenazi Jews have a sub-language of their own, which is called Yiddish. Yeah, so which is a mix of Hebrew and Eastern European languages, particularly German and Polish, some Russian, but mostly German and Polish, along with Hebrew. And then Sephardic Jews, as you can probably imagine, being from Spain and Portugal, have a mix of Spanish and Hebrew, which is less known in the United States, called Ladino. And so Mexico and Argentina and Brazil have a larger population of what are called Sephardic Jews, but all the migration of Jews to the Western Hemisphere after the Holocaust is what led that. You actually are so lucky that you have 3 different synagogues here in Grand Rapids, and each one of them is a different denomination of Judaism. So if you wanted to attend a Reform synagogue, you can do so at Temple Emmanuel, which is just right up the street on Fulton. If you wanted to attend a conservative synagogue, you can do so at, I forgot the name of the congregation, Ahavas Israel. And then if you wanted to attend an Orthodox service, then you could attend the Chabad. And I did not do that guttural enough, but it's CH is Chabad. Chabad House, which is up on Michigan Street as well. And so I've been lucky enough to meet the rabbis both at Temple Emmanuel and Congregation Havas Israel. Very nice people, really great guys, and really great colleagues. And so if you wanted to meet and do that, I will say in, I think, a month's time at Grand Valley State, the Kaufman Institute, Interfaith Institute, will be doing a Passover Seder. And so if you're interested in learning more about that opportunity to attend a Passover Seder, I can give you that information. Anybody ever been to, besides Fred and I, been to some of these synagogues? Yeah, Bruce?
I've been to Temple Emmanuel.
You've been to Temple Emmanuel? Yeah? Anybody else? Yeah.
Yes, Temple Emmanuel.
Temple Emmanuel, yeah. Temple Emmanuel being the Reform synagogue. Reform Judaism is by far the largest denomination of Judaism in the United States. Second is conservative, and then last is Orthodox Judaism, but we'll get to that here in a moment. I mentioned is at least one of these. It's very hard to talk about Judaism in the United States post 1947, because so much of people's understanding of Judaism in the modern era have been shaped by these 2 events. That is Yom HaShoah. Hashoah is the word for Holocaust in Hebrew. It means burnt offering. And so Yom is day, like Yom Kippur, Day of Atonement. Yom HaShoah is the day of the Holocaust remembrance. Like I said, 6 million Jews were killed during the Holocaust. Somewhere between 9 and 11 million people died in the Holocaust in total. Once you add gypsies, gay and lesbian people, communists, political dissidents, people of color, the disabled. When you add all of those 2, the Jews who died, 9 to 11 million people. So prior to the Holocaust, there were around 25,000 Jews in the world. 25 million Jews in the world. But after the Holocaust, that number went down obviously considerably, as well as the pogroms of the Soviet Union. Then in 1947, there was the creation of the State of Israel. And it's really hard to tease out Judaism from these 2 events. It's so seminal and foundational to modern understanding of Israel, our Judaism, I'm sorry. And really, each one of these things is incredibly important, so complex, and we will not have time to dive into either one of them in any sort of major way. But if you want to learn more, I can definitely help you. One thing I do want you to be aware of is the State of Israel, formed in 1947 by a UN charter, is not the Kingdom of Israel in the Bible. And I need people to be very aware of that. The borders are not the same. The conditions of those the creation of the kingdom of Israel versus the state of Israel in 1947. This is the way I always like to put it. There are no Israelis in the Bible. There are Hebrews, there are Israelites, there are Judeans, there are Jews, but there are no Israelis. Israelis did not exist until 1947. And so be very aware of that. Because honestly, it is mostly evangelical Christianity that champions the myth that the state of Israel is the same as the kingdom of Israel in the Bible. And it's very important for us to be very aware that those are two very different things. But what is true is anti-Semitism. The anti-Semitism did not start or end with the Holocaust. I wish it had ended with the Holocaust, but it did not.
Or before.
It is well before. It is well before. And like I said, when we did traditional indigenous religions, I needed to stand here as a Christian and confess that we have been incredibly detrimental and harmful and trying to eradicate many traditional indigenous religions around the world as Christian people. The largest group of anti-Semitism in the world are Christians. Christianity perpetuates anti-Semitism more than any other group of people around the world, which is dangerous because Christians are the largest religion in the world. And I say that because Nazi propaganda in 1930 and 1940 Germany, all it did was take the propaganda of the Catholic and Lutheran Church during the Reformation and update it for modern times. Yeah. Tim.
Are you referring as, when you say Christians, are you referring to Catholic and Catholicism?
I'm talking about.
Is that how you refer to that when you say Christian? Are you referring to Catholic?
Yeah, I'm talking about all of us.
Okay.
Right. I'm not talking about you
Right.
individually, that you are an anti-Semite or that you have anti-Semitism beliefs. I'm talking about us, we as a Christian faith. Right. And it's in our Bible. So here, I wish this was from a long time ago. This was from last year in Tampa, Florida. This was on the front page of the Tampa newspaper. And it's an accurate quote from the Gospel of John. So it's in our Bible. Those of you who have taken Bible study with me and have gone through all 4 Gospels know that I point this out every single time. But the Gospel of John is one of the most anti-Semitic books ever written in the history of humanity. And we just need to be clear about that. And so much of anti-Semitism in the world is laid at our feet. And I just feel like that is very important. Yeah, Frederick, go ahead.
Isn't that quote focusing on the religious leaders specifically?
Sure. So I appreciate you saying that. So what you have to do with this is be nuanced and give historical context and allow, but so many Christians and so many clergy are biblically illiterate. And so they take the English translation from the original Greek, it is the word Jews, and they give no context to that. Right. And so this is read from the street and people just take it at face value. But anti-Semitism, again, has a long roots in Christianity. This is a picture from a painting, a tapestry from the 14th century in which Jews in Europe were blamed for the Black Plague. Nearly half the population of Jewish people, over half the population of Europe died during the plague. And there was active propaganda blaming Jews for the Black Plague. And this is a painting of Jewish people being eradicated, being killed by good Christian people because they were blamed for the plague that raged through Europe. Last but certainly not least were the Crusades, where Jewish people were rooting for Muslims to win, because the Muslim people were very tolerant and accepting of Jews during the Crusades, whereas Christian soldiers and such murdered Jews on the way to Jerusalem. So I just point this out to say these are in our roots, And the way that we overcome those things is to say things plainly, lament them, confess them, ask God's forgiveness for them, and then we move forward in a better way into the future. All right. I think I laid that on thick enough, but I think it's really important. It's also, I think, really important to understand that for a lot of us, we know a little bit about Judaism, where the other things we don't know much about, right? So these are words that probably right? You know what a rabbi is, right? They're a teacher, and they're the me, right? They're the me at where? At the Jewish church, the synagogue, right? So many people think of synagogue as Jewish church. You might know what kosher is. What's that? It's a pickle, right? Exactly. You can go through. There is actually a kosher section in the grocery stores down in Kenwood. You know, there's not even a synagogue anywhere there. Like there's a whole shelf of kosher foods. Shiva, what's Shiva?
Bereavement.
Yeah, it is the ritual of bereavement and mourning. When a loved one dies, sitting Shiva. That's not the only bereavement ritual. We're going to talk about that next week. Here are three Yiddish words that are part of popular American slang. Klutz.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, see? That's a Yiddish word. Kibosh, right? You're gonna put the kibosh on. It's done. We're getting rid of it. Tukis. It's your backside. It's your buttocks, right? Passover, Hanukkah, some holidays that many of us know about. Maybe you've been to a Seder. Maybe you've been to a Hanukkah candle lighting ceremony. And then some of the Jewish foods that many of us absolutely love. I love latkes, potato pancakes and sour cream, so good. Bagels and lox, matzo ball soup. Many of us have had these delicacies in our lives, and we really love them. So a lot of us know a lot more about Judaism than we give ourselves credit for, and Judaism is just sort of interwoven into American life.
Didn't they just celebrate a holiday like over the last weeks? I've seen a lot of it on social media now.
Oh, I'm sure. Is it Purim? Was Purim just around the?
Proof's coming up. I don't think it's.
Started with the S. Oh,
Yeah.
oh, Sukkot.
Shabbat.
No, oh, well, Shabbat. So Shabbat, that's really great. So, if you are an Ashkenazi Jew, it's Shabbos, Sabbos, Shabbos. If you are a Sephardic Jew, then it's Shabbat. And
It's a weekly thing.
it's a weekly thing. It's every Friday evening when the sun goes down, Shabbat begins, or Shabbos begins. And if you walk into a synagogue, Tim, then they will say, Happy Shabbos. And then one of the songs that's usually begins a Shabbat service is Shabbat Shalom. I know sing it. But next week I'll do it. So like I said, Judaism is often credited with creating monotheism, the belief in one all-powerful creator, almighty God. Judaism evolved out of a region that was very polytheistic and had no problem recognizing other gods. In fact, about 2/3 of the Hebrew Bible recognizes other gods. Maybe you've heard about the god Baal, which is a Canaanite god, or you've heard about the god Marduk, which is a Babylonian god. Or you've heard about the god Dagon, which is a Philistine god. All of these gods were acknowledged by our Hebrew ancestors during the time of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, of the prophets, of Ezekiel, and Elijah and Elisha, Samuel, and if you read through the Hebrew Bible, you can find these gods in. What happened was there was a thing called the Babylonian exile. In 597 BCE, the Babylonian Empire conquered what then was called Judah. which is where we get the word Jew from, which was the southern kingdom that was, just stay with me. It was the kingdom that was left after the northern kingdom had already been defeated. While in the Babylonian exiles, key ancient Jewish theologians, intellectuals, and others, philosophers, got together and really solidified their theological position. And so when they come back from the Babylonian exile to Jerusalem to rebuild the temple after Cyrus, who was the king of Persia, had conquered the Babylonians and allowed the Jewish people to return to Jerusalem, they did so fully monotheistic. And if you look at all of the post-exile literature in the Hebrew Bible, Ezra, Nehemiah, 3rd Isaiah, and the like, and some of the other minor prophets, it is all monotheistic. And there is no more mention of other gods in the Hebrew Bible. So, monotheism evolved out of a polytheistic worldview using this really traumatic and life-altering event of the Babylonian exile and the destruction of the Jerusalem temple in 597. And so I always like to say that, yes, they are. I do believe that the crediting of the Jewish faith with monotheism is correct. But to say that it was always monotheistic is actually not accurate in any sort of way. That being said, even once they got to a monotheistic tradition, that does not mean that God didn't have multiple names. And so these are 6 of the most popular and used names for God in the Hebrew Bible. The most powerful, or the one that is the most sacred, is at the very top. It is called the Tetragrammaton. We actually don't know what this word sounds like, because in ancient Hebrew, there are no vowels. But we have put vowels in it because we are English-speaking people and we like vowels. And so we have determined that these 4 letters, YHWH, which is derived from the Hebrew word for the verb to be. So in the story of Moses encountering the burning bush on top of the mountain, Moses asks God, "By what shall I call you?" They're going to ask me what your name is. And God from the burning bush replies, "I am that I am." But that word to be in the Hebrew is tenseless. It is neither past, present, or future tense. So it would be equally accurate to translate the name of God as "I was that I was, I am that I am, I will be that I will be." Does that sound familiar? As it was in the beginning, is now, and will be forever. Amen. The Gloria Patri, I think. The Gloria Patri. I had $50,000 in student loans that say that. This is the most common and the most powerful name of God in the Hebrew Bible. But our good Jewish friends do not use the name of God in their common, language or in their writing. So they will often write in English G-D as a sign of respect for the name of God. And so in many writings for our Jewish friends, this is how they translate this word into English, G-D. But there are other names in the Hebrew Bible for the names of for the God. Hashem, which basically means the name. Elohim, which means the judge, the just judge. El Shaddai, which means the Almighty. Adonai, which means creator. And in Genesis 2, the creation story, there's a nice play on words. Adonai, the creator, creates Adam, the created one, from Adama, the earth. There's a nice Hebrew. This is why we should all have to read it in Hebrew, because you can actually see the synergy of the story. Adam doesn't become Adam's first name until they get kicked out of the Garden of Eden. And then last, there is actually a divine feminine in the Hebrew Bible. It's Chokmah, which translates into English as wisdom. And so even though there is one God, God has many names. Our Muslim friends will say that there's 99 names for God, and that only scratches the surface. Of all of the ways that God is described in the Hebrew Bible, the most popular by far is not love. That is, God is love is more of a Christian understanding. The most popular way to describe God, the most popular adjectives for God is a just and merciful God. Over almost 300 times in the Hebrew Bible, God is called just and merciful. This word just or justice in Hebrew probably translates better, if you ask my humble opinion, as equitable or fair. So when God is judging us, God does so understanding that all of us are in different positions, have different power, have different abilities, are different people, and is fair in that way. And then God's mercy is infinite, and God's mercy is also fair and just and merciful and kind. And so you could also say God is a equitable and kind God, or those are all nice synonyms. But this is the most common way that our Jewish friends understand the characteristics of God. That God is a just and merciful God, which means that we as God's people, that we are also called to be just and merciful. And these things are always held in tension with one another. They are not separated out from each other. And the best way for us to be just and merciful is to keep to the 613 mitzvot. Those are commandments. 613 of them found in the latter half of the book of Exodus, the book of Leviticus, the book of Numbers, some in the book of Deuteronomy as well. 613. Everything under the sun to help us be able to interact and live justly and mercifully with one another. It is how do we live a holy life, an ethical life, a moral life. God has provided those things for us in the 613 mitzvot. Of course, the most well-known of the 613 are what we call the Decalogue, or the Ten Commandments. And so here they are written out in Hebrew, so you can see them in Hebrew. Of course, and this is when all of us who are movie fans of the great Jewish comedian, yeah,
The 15.
yeah, right, where Mel Brooks stands up on the mountain with 3 stone tablets, and he goes, well, God has given me 15 commandments, and then he drops one, 10 commandments. Good old Mel Brooks. They are making a Spaceballs 2, and some of us are very excited about that. I want to read some of these for you because my mother used to tell me that number 9 was, you shall not lie. And my mother was apt to say, well, you can go to hell the same for murdering as you can for lying. I'm like, that's not true. I don't think that's true. And it wasn't until I got to seminary that I realized that she was lying. That is not what the commandment says. It does not say, thou shalt not lie. It says, thou shalt not bear false testimony against your neighbor. What do you think that has to do with? Where would you give testimony? In a court of law. What is this should say, thou shalt not perjure thyself. That's really what that says. It's not lying. We all know there are real good reasons to tell a lie every so often. You can all think of one. The other thing is here. The other one that gets really misunderstood is number 3. Thou shalt not misuse the name of the Lord your God. What have we been told that this means? Don't swear, right? It's don't curse, don't swear, that's what this is. And, but that is not what this means. It means do not make a pledge by God's name and then not keep that pledge. Do not say, I swear to God, I will be there by 8 p.m. and then not show up by 8 p.m. That is a misuse of a vow made in God's name. Because God, Scotty, that's a great look, man. That's a great look. Now, I'm not saying that you should go around just cursing.
No, I know that.
Right, but that is not what this is. This is what we tell our Sunday school children, to tell them to have good language. That's a good thing to tell our children. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that's not what the third commandment is. The third commandment is have some integrity. But let your word be good. And if you're going to swear by God's name, then by God's sake, keep the pledge.
Well, growing up, we always heard you can't keep your word, you're nothing.
Well, and there's something higher than not keeping your word.
Yeah.
If you swear by God, that's what that means. So these are the two that often I think are the most misinterpreted, number 3 and number 9. If you ask me which is the most important, it's number 4, which is keep the Shabbat and keep it holy. Particularly in the 21st century, in a grinding capitalistic society, taking a break that is actually refreshing and renewing, stepping away from interacting in the economy is vitally important for our bodies, our minds, and our spirits. And these 3 are a lot easier to keep, and these 6 are a lot easier to keep if your body, mind, and soul are healthy. And this 4th one is about spiritual, physical, and emotional health. That's how important number 4 is. So if you're going to ask me of the 10, which are the most important, they all rest on number 4. Not the others aren't important. I would just say this is the most important. So God doesn't, if I was going to say, if God is a just and merciful God, and God wants us to keep the mitzvot, to keep the commandments, I would say the way that God relates to us to help us do that is by making and keeping a covenant with us. But there's more than one covenant in the Hebrew Bible. There are actually 5 in the Hebrew Bible. Let's see if you know what they are. So what's called the first covenant that God makes is in Genesis 2. It is called the Adamic covenant. What is the Adamic covenant? Think of your Bible. What happens in Genesis 2? God says to Adam and Eve.
Adam and Eve are cast out of the.
Okay, before that.
Oh, don't eat that.
What?
Don't eat the apple.
Don't eat the fruit of
Knowledge.
knowledge of good and evil. Good and evil. Thou shalt not eat the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, or you will perish. Here is proof that God's grace is from the very beginning. Because God's created Adam and Eve do what? They break the covenant. Do they die? No. Now, God does not make it easy on them, but God does not kill them, which is what God said God would do. So if you ever hear God's grace is only in the New Testament, you tell that person hogwash. It starts in chapter 2 of the book. God forgives Adam and Eve, is gracious to them, merciful in chapter 2 and 3 of the book. The Noah covenant. What is the Noah covenant? Yeah, Fred.
Are those the commandments, the lesser commandments, that end up, some of them end up in the 10 commandments? You know, the Noahide
No, that's a good guess though, man. I really appreciate that. It's very specific, the Noah covenant.
That he never would, flood the earth.
That's right. God will never destroy the earth by flood. God reserves the right to destroy the earth in many other ways, but not by flooding. I think the way God will do it now is just by leaving us to our own devices. I think we'll do it ourselves on a long enough timeline. All right, number 1 and 2. Number 3, the Abrahamic covenant. Yeah, yeah.
I will be your God, you will be my people, and you will have multitude like the sands of the.
That's right. Your descendants will outnumber the sands on the beaches and the stars in the sky. And so, yes, but that is exactly right. I will be your God and you will be my people. And that covenant will pass on from generation to generation in infinity. It goes on and on and on. The Mosaic covenant happens at Mount Sinai. Moses goes up the mountain, he gets the mitzvot, he comes down, he says, God has a new covenant for us. The covenant is, I'll give you a hint. It starts with the word if. It is the only conditional covenant that God makes with God's people. Every other one is unconditional. If.
Don't worship any other idol.
Yeah, good. It's what part of the commandment? If you keep my commandments, then I will be your God. Now notice he said to Abraham, I'll always be your God. But then God added, if you keep my commandments. And then the Davidic covenant is.
If you send that guy out to the army, I'll give you his wife.
Gosh. Yeah. Oh my gosh. David would be in the Epstein files. I'm just telling you. David was not a good human being. Good king, great general, horrible human. God says to David that you and your descendants will always be on the throne of the kingdom of Israel. And so this is where we get the messianic expectation that someone from the line of David will arrive to free the Hebrew people or the Jewish people from Roman oppression, and which is when we get to the messianic expectations of Jesus. All of these are found in the Hebrew Bible, which is called the Tanakh. It is the exact same books found in our Christian Old Testament, but they are arranged differently. And we're going to end with this. So the first 5 books of the Tanakh, and it derives its name from the 3 sections of the Hebrew Bible: Torah, Nevi'im, Kethuim. The Torah is the law, and it is found the Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. These are the same as our first 5 books of our Bible. They tell the story of creation, the story of God's liberation from oppression, the laws in which mostly the clergy, but also the regular people should follow to lead a holy life, struggling through the wilderness as they walked for 40 years before they got to the promised land. And then the retelling of the first 4 in an abbreviated version. This was written during the Babylonian exile. And when in Ezra and Nehemiah, they say that they brought a book back with them from the exile, Deuteronomy is that book. And they basically retold the whole story of Genesis through, well, mostly Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers in one shorter volume. If you will, it's the Reader's Digest version. These are sometimes called the 5 books of Moses. And the tradition is that Moses wrote these 5 books. Moses did not write these 5 books. And only the most traditional Orthodox rabbi would tell you such. I am not saying anything controversial about this. How do we know Moses didn't write these books? Because Deuteronomy describes Moses' death. So you couldn't have. These are the five books of the Torah. Nevi'im means prophets. These come next because they interpret how to live out the commandments, the mitzvot in the Torah. So Joshua is actually. Oh my gosh! Now I'm drawing a blank. I think Joshua is actually after Deuteronomy. I lost it there. Some of these orders are the same, but in the Nevi'im, there's only one book called Samuel. There's not First and Second Samuel. It's combined as one. There's only one book called Kings. There's no First and Second Kings. And then you have what's called the 12. Then lastly, you have what's called the writings or the scrolls. These are books that are read on occasion for worship, special ceremonies, special occasions, and these are liturgical, worshipful ways of interpreting the Torah. So you have the Torah, the interpretation of the Torah from the prophets, and then the application of the Torah in ritual and ceremony in the writings. Questions about that? So same books, different order, telling a different story. When we get to Christianity, we'll see that the Christian Old Testament was rearranged so that the last book is Malachi. And at the end of Malachi, you have the prophecy that God will send Elijah to prepare the way for the Messiah. Well, doesn't that just lead beautifully into the New Testament, where the very first person you meet in the New Testament is John the Baptist, who is thought of to be an incarnation of Elijah. Instead, the Hebrew Bible ends with 2 Chronicles. And this is the last thing we're going to talk about, and then we will take a break until next week. The Tanakh has poetry, philosophy, songs, histories, prophecies, all of these things. But if you were going to ask me to sum up the Tanakh, I would say the recurring theme of the Tanakh is that our Jewish ancestors consistently and constantly were exiled, and then they returned. They were lost, and then they were restored. And the Tanakh ends with this beautiful declaration that the Jewish people will return to Jerusalem. It ends with 2 Chronicles 36:23. The Lord, the God of heaven, has charged me, the me here is Cyrus of Persia, has charged me to build God a home, a house in Jerusalem, which is in Judah. Let anyone among you who are of God's people go now back to Jerusalem, and may the Lord their God be with them. It ends with restoration of the Jewish people back into their homeland, back into their home city, where they're going to rebuild the temple. And that has been the hope of our Jewish friends for the longest of times, which is what gave birth to the Zionist movement in the 18th and 19th century, which eventually led to the creation of the state of Israel. But is also, this is one of the last sentiments said at a Passover Seder. You end a Passover Seder by saying, next year in Jerusalem. And so it's this return, this hope. And Jerusalem, in that case, is both a physical place, but it's also a spiritual hope. It's a longing peace. It's a peace. It's a prayer for lasting and longing peace. That next year will be the year when we live in peace together in the new Jerusalem. And so this idea of exile and return, loss and restoration, we'll start with that next week. Hopefully you learned something. Did you learn something about Judaism today that you did not know? I love this tradition. It means so much to me. I hope it means something to you. Until I see you again, everyone, may God bless you and keep you. Drive safe, everyone. Bye-bye.